Hello again. I'm going to try wrapping up this introductory lecture with um, this particular 15-minute section. So we talked about Olivia, and now I want to talk about Viola and also Mariah. Right? I tend to say Mariah, and then I have to. It is Mariah in the poetical sense of the play, but all right. So Viola clearly comes from good stock, right? I mean, she has money to give to the captain. Um, Her brother is now, well, either drowned or missing. um, and if she were on land, on her homeland, home's land, she would be similar to an Olivia, right? That she has a very similar sort of background, it seems to be, in the early understanding that we develop of her character. She has cultural awareness, so she can sing and dance and do, she is a cultured woman, so she, by implication, has been educated enough in order for her to have some, not skills, but qualities, right, that would have rendered her highly desirable to people wanting to marry and reproduce and kind of accumulate wealth and taste. However, as we find Viola, she is in an alien land, right? She does not know where she is. She needs the captain to acquaint her, to situate her, and indeed to help her, right? Become a viable subject in this new land that she has suddenly found herself dashed against into. Her single status is much more precarious as compared to Olivia's, specifically because she does not have any economic resources within her purview, right? She does not have a bank account in this new land, if you will. She does not have a history of being of a worthy family in this new land, and she has to start from scratch. And that is where the single woman's precariousness becomes urgently palpable, right? She cannot roam the streets just as a young single woman, because that would have, again, that's why the history is important, that would have just been problematic, right? Now, there were women who were single working women in England. They worked in domestic spheres. They worked in as milkmaids, barmaids. They had menial jobs, right, in the urban and provincial areas. And the understanding was that when the time would be appropriate, they would be able to marry. And I'll reserve the conversation of postmenopausal single women to another place, to a conversation about another play. But there were possibilities for women of lower social and economic classes to find jobs that, or to find ways in which to make some sort of a living that would enable them to contribute to their own and the household economy, if you will. But for a woman in the middling classes or in the upper social and economic classes, that was not a possibility, right? And Olivia and Viola are, as I said, of comparable class, social and economic class. So for Viola now to find herself in an alien land alone and without a male family member to support her, to um, sponsor her, right, in this new land, she really will have to transform. She has to undergo a radical transformation, and that is what she mobilizes, right? She at first says that, okay, I want to work with, or for this Olivia woman, that would be just great. I can present myself as a maid or something. And the captain says, well, that's not possible because, Olivia's been mourning and no one's allowed to see her. The next best thing is, of course, to work for the highest person, who is a man. Highest person in this new land, in Illyria. And so she decides that she will ingratiate herself to Orsino and become some sort of a servant to him. But what kind of servant, right? And this is where the homosociality of men's and women's networks comes to be a really provocative and interesting point that the play is going to stretch out throughout and really develop. She needs to transform her body, right? She has to change her clothing, and she's going to present herself as a eunuch, right? In order to be acceptable. And as a eunuch, she does not have, say, the kind of masculine currency that some other men surrounding Orsino would have, but she will have a peculiar currency to traverse between male and female networks and between male and female communities. So she becomes, and I keep using the word peculiarly and queerly valuable to Orsino. And that, although she does not know that at the very moment that she is becoming eunuch, that is what renders her labor both viable and acceptable in Illyria. That she is not a young single woman walking around in the streets being nomadic. She finds herself a sort of host body, and she latches onto this host body, the master, if you will, as a servant, but not as a female servant, as a servant whose body is defeminized at the same time that it is hyperfeminized. And we'll talk about this after I've heard from you about your thoughts on Acts 1 and 2. So her precarity is important for us to understand and for us to think of in the historical context of female labor. What kind of female labor was acceptable? What kind of single women were acceptable for certain periods of time? They always had to be in a sort of limboid state in media res, moving towards matrimony, if you will, right? And that's something that she cannot present herself as in this new land, so she shapeshifts and cross-dresses in order to survive. The third single woman, as we see in the play, is Maria. Maria is a waiting woman of sorts, right? So she's not a maid in the same sense that she's not the charmaid. She's not doing absolutely menial jobs. She could very well be literate. She, as one of you has noted already, has a great wit about her, so her facility with rhetoric and language is impressive, right? And she also seems to have enough control or authority in the household in order to be able to, say, chastise Feste, in order to be able to even chastise, albeit unseriously, Sir Toby, right, the knight. And she has enough awareness of what her mistress is like and is wont to do, which which tells us that she is close enough with Olivia for her to have some sort of a reflective energy and power from Olivia, right? So these are two single women. Olivia is the mistress. Mariah is not the mistress, is a sort of waiting woman of sorts, and is good friends with Olivia, and therefore has access to the ways in which Olivia thinks. And that is very important for you to remember. Amelia, you've seen another kind of waiting woman in Othello. Amelia is not a servant, absolutely not, right? But she is of a different social and economic class as compared to Desdemona. And that might have informed her decision to, say, support her husband's dubious need for and desire for Desdemona's handkerchief. The class antipathies, though not palpable in Amelia's conversations with Desdemona, are palpable in her refusal to romanticize an unromantic situation, right? And her sort of near contempt for the airheadedness, if you will, of Desdemona's absolute love for Othello, who at many points in the play is a horrible, harassing, even assaulting husband, right? So Amelia and Mariah occupy similar class terrain. Amelia's class is, of course, her class is a reflection of her husband's class because she's married, right? So she has no choice but to inhabit the class of Iago. However, in Mariah's case, her class is a mystery. How has she come to be the waiting woman? We don't quite know, right? How and why is she the preferred companion, if you will, or friend to Olivia? We don't know. We understand that Feste has been around and has then disappeared and has come back, and so we have a sense that Feste has been around for a while, but we don't have a sense of how long. The duration of Mariah's labor, her contributions to Olivia's household, and to Olivia's nurturing, if you will, is left mysteriously open. Now, if you've read Romeo and Juliet, you know there are nurses, right, who become very close friends and keepers of secrets and such for female and male children, but we don't have any sense of whether or not Mariah has kind of been absorbed into the household and has become part of the household because of her childhood presence out there. But it's unlikely that she was a nurse, right? Because there seems to be enough of a simpatico between her and Olivia. Right, she has the ability to flirt and dally in a sort of youthful manner, which suggests that she is not an elderly woman. So her class, I think, is the most interesting one because as a single woman who, in the contemporary patriarchal structures of the period, would have been expected to marry, right? Would have been expected to marry. She is single at this point in the play and is not looking, right? She does not seem to have any sort of yearning that we see in, say, characters like Desdemona or Hermia or Helena, right? Nor does she have a sort of hesitant resignation like a woman like Hippolyta. So keep these two women in mind along with Olivia, and I will